Dear colleagues, we continue our working day at Ukraine Crisis Media Center on the topics of next press briefing, announcing an international scientific conference, Kazymyr Malevych, Kyiv aspect and charitable auction. Our guests are Tetyana Filevska, researcher of Malevich heritage, organizer of the book Kazymyr Malevych, Kyiv period 1928-1930, organizer of the conference. Dmytro Gorbachov, professor, researcher of Ukrainian avant-garde, the honorary head of the organizers committee, Pavlo Bilodid, the cultural project manager, Kyiv-Mohyla Business School, Leonid, Maruschak, curator of Ukraine Crisis Media Center's art department, Pavlo Gudimov, curator and the founder of Via Galleria Art Center. Welcome, dear guests, and now Tetyana is given the floor. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. This is a wonderful event to announce this conference that we prepare for about half a year. The decision was taken to hold this conference after the book Kazymyr Malevych Kyiv period was published. The materials are published on the activity of our great compatriot Kievan, and this was a sensation in 1915, and now we celebrate 100 years of Black Square. And among the materials concerning the activity of Malevych in Kyiv, and also articles were included. Maybe this artist is well researched in the world, but he himself wrote a lot, about 5 volumes. But documents were lacking to speak about Kyiv period in Malevich activity, and now we have a chance to speak about Kazymyr Malevych, about his activity in this period. And publication of this book is one of the motivation factors, and a number of projects were implemented connected with Malevych, and Pavel will tell us about this in more detail. And also important aspect to understand better the heritage of Kazymyr Malevych by Ukraine is address the scientific community and sharing knowledge about Malevych. And we decided to hold this international conference to invite the most famous and all scientists who study Malevych in the world, and to devote this conference to Kyiv period. And we are speaking not about 1928-1930 period, but Malevych is more connected with Kyiv, his birth, his childhood, his relatives, his education in Maruschak school, and also his constant communication with artistic community. So these are the topics we are going to discuss during 4-day conference that will be on the 6th till 9th of August this year in Kyiv. We are very happy that such famous researchers of avant-garde art will come, Goldberg and Nakov, to these researchers who now work in France. Nakov is from Bulgaria, but he works in France for many years, and Nakov introduced the term Ukrainian avant-garde. They were the first ones who in 1970s, by analyzing Kazymyr Malevych art and Alexander Bogomazov works, Burlyukov, Alexander Archipenko works, they understood that avant-garde is not only Russian, and but he is more even Ukrainian by origin, because there are many avant-garde artists in Ukraine. And Claude and Andrei were invited, and they accepted the invitation. They will come to Kyiv to discuss Kazymyr Malevych artistic works. Also, Poland, the Netherlands, Portugal, Belarus, Israel, Canada, Russia, and Belarus representatives will be present. We have 30 applications, and the majority will come to the conference. Organizationally, we are very glad that we are supported by the state institutions and private initiatives, civil society initiatives. Namely, I would like to thank the initiator of this conference is newly created organization, Institute Malevych organization. I belong to, and co-organizer of the conference is Kyiv-Mohyla Business School. The partners who supported the conference are Ukraine Crisis Media Center, Department of Cultural Diplomacy of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, National Museum of Ukraine, Polish Institute, Alexander Dovzhenko Center, Young Gallery Cultural Project, Rodovit Publishing House, Antiquar Magazine. And also at the meeting with Evgeny Shuk, we got his support of the conference and the project connected with Kazymyr Malevych studies and avant-garde in Ukraine studies. So these are the main things about the conference, about the format of the conference, the main guests and organizers and partners. And now we go into some details, and I would like to ask Dmytro Milyanovich, because he is really a famous and renowned researcher of Malevych and Ukrainian avant-garde. So he will tell us about the importance of this conference to the world. For many years, maybe even tens of years, our colleagues in different countries said, why you didn't hold the conference in Kyiv? Because Vitebsk, Berlin, Warsaw, Moscow, St. Petersburg all had these conferences on Malevych, and Kyiv didn't have such a conference. And Malevych, he said that he was Ukrainian. And it wasn't easy to organize such a conference, and we waited for Tetyana Filevska, and she got involved. And now those people, for example, from the United States who told me 30 years ago, why didn't you have this conference, maybe they won't have such complaints again. So here is an important moment. All people who study Malevych, they like Ukraine, because when they started to research Russian avant-garde, they found out that there is a lot of Ukrainian trends there, and without this aspect, one cannot understand why avant-gardists are not like this, not others. So John Bolt, who won't come to the conference, he is the American professor, once he said, we exhausted Malevych, and there are a lot of mysteries about him, and we just speak the same things again. Why, for example, Malevych didn't use colors in St. Petersburg, and then he got colors, and why there was a second peasant cycle there, and when Ukrainian aspects was found, everything was put in place. One German scientist wrote why. Because Malevych returned to Ukraine and he remembered the Ukrainian folk art, because he lived in villages. Then he saw bright colors and spectralists were also here. So why he painted peasants? He painted them as Iron Man, but then he changed his paintings. He liked them so much, and he wrote in his autobiography that they painted their huts, and these were his first impressions. And then he came to Kyiv. He was young. He met with Pimonenko, and Pimonenko invited him to his studio, and he said that Pimonenko brought me to Maruschak studio, and I was really impressed by his pictures. They depict Ukraine, and this book, it is presented all his thoughts on this. And also in the 1930s, Stalin and Bolsheviks, he saw the tragedy of peasants, and he used yellow and blue as a background for his pictures. So this was the personal tragedy for him. So studying Malevich, we understand that it is impossible to explain his paintings without Ukrainian trace. And so different people said that not only Russian period is important in Malevich art. So we made an effort, both American scientists and our scientists. Why Verlyuk is not like Filonov? Because Filonov is Russian, and all Russian mentality is present in his works, and Verlyuk is Ukrainian, and he has different colors, step instinct. So they understood that this is important, and both said that Russian avant-garde existed, and if there is Russian Empire, but there are many national echelons, and the biggest is Ukrainian echelon. And there are so many Ukrainians, and they are trendsetters in avant-garde. And John Bold and I said, I would rename Russian avant-garde into Ukrainian avant-garde. And he visited Moscow often, and I asked about what is about your face after these words. He said, oh, everything is okay with me. And for them it is important not because they are patriots like we are. And my Moscow friend said, you have some paranoia. So if you see that something is there, so you just make it Ukrainian. I say, but it's okay because I'm Ukrainian. But this is the view from outside. And when these researchers come here, they will present their views on this. And now it is very well seen that Ukrainian period in Malevich art is really important for understanding of his works. I would like to agree with Mr. Gorbachov, and it is really important to carry out this conference, and this conference should have been held long ago, and we want to get involved in the realization of this idea, because for the last year Malevich organically was present in our projects of our Kyiv Business School, and we are the part of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, and we develop humanitarian sphere starting from reconstruction of Malevich. When the texts appeared, they were found, and the book appeared, and the book also motivated such events in the Malevich days. And this is brought to the new, more quality level. And it is of interest that in this conference we try to find our modern culture that hails from 19th and 18th century, but this is a powerful signal to the world community, communication event, and Leonid also will tell us about the cases of why this event is so important, and we will have more events like this. Leonid Maruschak is given the floor. I would like to give one example. Recently, Holland journalists came to Ukraine. This was the delegation. Previously, there should be a referendum in Holland when they had to decide the fate of Ukraine in the framework of this referendum. And these journalists, they came here and they stayed here for 3 days and they followed our excursion program. They asked only one question: where can we see Malevich works? And we were ashamed because we couldn't provide an answer to this question. In the Arsenal, the exhibition still wasn't open, and also it was difficult to get to Kharkiv to see Malevich there. That's why this is the bright example that people want to see Malevich here. And if we are speaking about Ukraine, Malevich is a very famous person to restore historical values, and for our Ukrainian Crisis Media Center it is important to communicate ideas of culture, and I am grateful to organizers of this conference. And in the term of conference,
I believe in course of conference we will develop plans for the future, and maybe in nearest future we will have Malevich Museum, where we will be able to show that best works of Malevich that we have in Ukraine as of today. Good afternoon. I think it's symbolic that modern artists participate in charity auction, which allows this conference to happen, to be held, and that this conference is devoted to Malevich. I think it's very important that not sponsors, not the state budget, but artists who were approached, they eagerly decided to participate in the auction of their works, charity works, to support the conference. How to approach to Malevich and his heritage today? First of all, we should understand how many works of Malevich do we have today in Ukraine. Then we should clearly understand whether we are ready to perceive him, to get him back. Because, I feel today a strong support, a strong resistance against Malevich and his counterposed to Mazepa. For example, that Mazepa is more important for contemporary Ukrainians, while I think that Malevich in the 20s, during the 30s and 40s, when he physically was present here, and he is important because of outsplash of Ukrainian avant-garde in 1960s, and probably the new generation of Ukrainian contemporary artists, which raised in 1990s, they should clearly understand that they are rooted in Malevich, they are based on Malevich, and today when after 25 years of our independence, we understand that there is such an artist in the world culture is Malevich. It's important for us to realize fully what does he means, because Malevich means not just the arts. Malevich symbolizes also the opportunity to innovation. In late 1990s, I saw the work by Malevich in a separate room. It was like a treasure by Malevich. I saw the peasants, I saw the black square. These were not originals, these were copies. But for me, it was important to see that this was that were Malevich, who was born in Kyiv. There was a lot of souvenirs. This shows that Malevich is always present in Georges Pompidou Center, in many Russian museums, in the world museums. Actually, each museum believes it's a great honor to show Malevich works in the museum. That's why it's important to represent Malevich. UCMC and some arts galleries in Ukraine had published the set of postcards with illustrations of Ukrainian avant-gardist artists, painters, and this is very interesting event. When academics, members of academic community attend conference, it's a serious event, a very high level academic event, but this conference later could be transformed. The outcomes of that conference could be transformed into such things as sets of illustrations. I was a month ago in a Pompidou Center in Paris, and I visited a special room in the Pompidou Center. And I visited special room devoted to the works by Malevich, and I saw there the black square embodied in stone, not the original, and saw the original black cross, which is the original from 1915, made in Kyiv. I think that during last several years, much is done to popularize Malevich here in Ukraine and around the world. Beside that set of postcards which you mentioned, we developed a brochure about Malevich. This was the popular study on Malevich, which we disseminated about our embassies around the world, and disseminated about our cultural chargé d'affaires around the world. There we mentioned our conference this year, and I would like to add a couple of words about charity auction among artists. Discussing with our stakeholders how to organize the conference, we understood that the conference is not a cheap event, especially when you wish to introduce international experts, and that's why we decided to organize a charity auction, which partially is related to the conference, and Kyiv-Mohyla Business School, Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, Malevych Center in Kyiv. Also, we have Art Center, honorary, Cultural Fund, Antiquity Association, and Obertas Jewelry Bureau, Fedor Vazyanov Center. This auction will be held here in the Ukrainian house. Some days later, we will start to advertise. For example, jewelry shop Obertas develops a special collection of jewelry. Fedor Vazyanov is preparing special collection of dresses and accessories in suprematism style. Gallery accepted considerable support from contemporary artists who agreed to support Malevych, who would understand them probably. Malevych experienced rather hard times during his life, and during his life he learned that it was difficult to earn from suprematism style, which he invented. Also, we received educational lots from the Kyiv-Mohyla Business School and the Kyiv Training Center, and also from David Publishing House about art suprematism in general. So please we invite you to reserve time between October 6th and 9th to visit our auction. Partially, events will be closed for public, but many events of the conference and auction will be opened for broad public. We will invite a lot of people to visit this and to witness how Kyiv aspects of Malevych life become more familiar in the world. Now questions. I am Dmytro Pirkov. I saw Malevych in the Russian Museum in St. Petersburg in 1997. This was for the first time when they showed their collections, which were hidden somewhere in the storages. They showed to broad public. Why we are lagging behind so long? The policy of the Soviet Union towards Ukraine was to suppress Ukraine by all possible means. In early 20s and 30s, Ukraine was leading in the cultural sphere, and there was such an outstanding figure of Skripnik who supported this and allowed Ukrainian artists to develop independently, and he, by the way, supported Malevych very much. But later, in the years of Stalin's repressions, there's veterinaries who were responsible for cultural development, and they suppressed development of Ukrainian culture. they recommended to take hammers and to destroy some objects of art. And in by the way, when we managed to get rid of this politics, of this policy in 1990s, but now there are some people who hold positions and who are indifferent to the Ukrainian glory of Malevich. And on the other hand, there is a lot of skepticism. When in late 1990s I saw Chagall and Malevich in Russian museums, I came here and visited our museums and requested them to show Malevich and Chagall, which we have, which showed the pictures of social realism, like military commander Shchor's visiting Lenin. This is not true. Shchor's never visited Lenin. And but I was impressed by the attitude of the director of National Museums, when they said to me, you know, this is our collection. Why they had Ekster, Bogomazov, Maximovich in their collections. When we have shown Maximovich in New York, they said, this is Ukrainian Klimt. And they said to me, he's modernist, and the modernist style, this is something bad. So the reasons were different, and the biggest fault is the lack of professional staff in our museums, and the lack of those people who are eager to promote Ukrainian art. We have Filevska, we have maybe other people, so we should make steps forward. So when Ukraine has any small opportunity to breathe in, it immediately comes out from darkness and shows itself. Even when we existed as the Ukrainian Socialist Republic, Ukrainian People's Republic, we made the first steps, and Skripnik managed to have Ukrainian pavilion in by Biennale. The Russians, Georgians appeared unable to know. And due to that pavilion, Ukrainian artists became known in the world. While during 1932-1933, Ukrainian art was totally destroyed. And when I came to the Ministry of Culture, I immediately felt the smell of Soviet times. When I suggest to have an exhibition by Ekster, and they don't have no idea who this lady is. I apologize for claiming, but I would like to say a couple of words for our partners in the Ministry of Culture and National Museum. we reached the agreement with the National Arts Museum that we, during our conference, we will be able to exhibit the archives by Malevich. Also, we are preparing exhibition of embroideries made after Malevich sketches, and we will show extracts from archives, central archives of arts and culture, materials of Malevich family. I would like to come back to the issue why we lagged behind 20 years. 3 years ago, I would answer this that we were indifferent. But today, I believe that it is profitable for somebody that, or for the benefit of somebody, that Malevich is perceived like Russian avant-garde. Malevich is not Russian avant-garde, and we should bring historical responsibility here. He should become a part of the decommunization process. His figure is to mention for explaining how art can change many things. Then there are no further questions. Let us finish this press conference. Thank you.